the day the hill fought back. The air was still when the blast ripped through the ridge. Rocks, some as big as kitchen tables, tore down the slope like a herd of angry giants. They didn't just fall, they bounced, twisted, and smashed everything in their path. By the time the dust settled, the barn belonging to Sheriff Tom Grayson was a pile of splintered wood and twisted metal. A cow stood defiantly atop a crushed luxury sedan, its owner, HOA President Victor Slade, staring in shock from the hilltop. For a moment, the only sound was the echo of his earlier boasts about a perfect blast. 2 seconds too late, he realized he'd started a war. 3 days earlier, the hill was just a quiet stretch of unincorporated land, home to nesting hawks and burrowing groundhogs. Sheriff Grayson used the flat land below to store feed, shelter livestock, and mend old fences. It was his family's land, passed down through generations, a place where his grandfather once said, "You don't move a mountain unless you're ready to live with the consequences." But Victor Slade, the slick-talking head of the Pineview Estates HOA, saw the ridge as an obstacle to his grand vision, a scenic enhancement for his gated community. Locals called it what it was, blowing up a hill for no good reason. Trouble started small. Surveyors from the HOA wandered onto Grayson's land, staking out plots they had no right to. A bulldozer left deep tracks across a pasture fence. Then came the notices delivered by cocky teenagers hired by Slade, filled with jargon about boundary adjustments and elevation corrections. Most folks tossed them in the trash. Grayson didn't, not because he was sheriff, but because that hill was his family's legacy. On Monday morning, he drove to the site, badge glinting in the sun. Crews were unloading explosives, orange tape flapping like unheeded warnings. "Is this legal?" Grayson asked, voice steady but sharp. The workers froze. Victor, in a neon vest and mirrored sunglasses, barely glanced his way. "Sheriff, we're beautifying the community. Progress, you know." Grayson stepped closer. "Progress needs permits." Victor waved a laminated packet. "Got all the signatures I need. Lawyers, too. This isn't your jurisdiction." Grayson's eyes narrowed. "That hill's 3 feet into county land. That's my jurisdiction." The air crackled with tension. Victor smirked, but his crew hesitated. Grayson nodded to the young contractor holding the detonator. "Pack it up, son. This ground's not stable." Then he walked away, calm as ever. He wasn't bluffing. Back at his office, Grayson called the county's geotechnical team. The call climbed the bureaucratic ladder, but by Tuesday morning, no one had stopped Slade. The HOA had scheduled the blast, complete with a rented drone to capture the spectacle. Grayson was on patrol, the inspector was delayed, and Victor was grinning like a man who'd already won. As the countdown hit 0, a hawk fled the ridge, groundhogs scrambled, and the earth roared. The explosion wasn't clean. Boulders rolled wild, splitting trees, flattening fences, and obliterating Grayson's barn. A ranch hand barely escaped, diving through a side door as the back wall caved in. Feedstocks were buried, the water pump mangled, and a pickup took a rock through its windshield. From the hilltop, the HOA crew watched in horror. Grayson appeared through the dust, boots crunching over debris, his face unreadable. He stopped beside a steaming boulder, picked up a shattered "No Trespassing" sign, and brushed off the dirt. Looking up at Slade, he said, low and clear, "Guess we'll talk now." Victor tried to spin it. He blamed a miscalculation in rock displacement. His lawyer called it an unfortunate geological event. The HOA issued a memo about a regrettable topographical incident. But Grayson wasn't interested in their words. He was building a case. The next morning, he was at the sheriff's office before dawn, sifting through land surveys and deed archives. The deeper he dug, the clearer it became. Slade had no authority. The HOA's jurisdiction ended 100 yards from the blast site. The ridge was protected under a 1989 Agricultural Heritage Clause. Slade hadn't just crossed the line, he'd dynamited it. Meanwhile, the HOA scrambled. Victor called an emergency board meeting to retroactively justify the blast as landscape remediation. But cracks were forming. A board member, retired veteran Carl Hensley, quietly tipped off the county about the unauthorized detonation. Victor's lawyer, a fast talker named Ethan Cole, sent Grayson a letter accusing him of interfering with private development. Grayson read it, handed it to his deputy, and said, "Print me a map. Get the drone footage. We're going to the town meeting." That Wednesday, the Firehouse Rec Center was packed. Ranchers, shopkeepers, even teens with phones filled the room. Victor strutted in like a politician, clutching a binder of HOA policies. He launched into a rehearsed speech about progress, property values, and how the blast was carefully planned. Then he made a mistake. "It's a shame some folks are turning this into a vendetta," he said, glancing at Grayson. The sheriff stood, walked to the front, and nodded to the projector. The drone footage played, raw, unedited. Explosives planted, wildlife fleeing, the barn collapsing in a cloud of dust. Then photos, a crushed feed silo, a rock in a truck's hood, an injured calf Grayson had pulled from the rubble. Finally, a letter from the state blasting board appeared. Grayson read it aloud. The licensed blaster had quit over site instability and permit issues, replaced by an unregistered crew. "This man," Grayson said, pointing at Slade, "detonated a hill without clearance, destroyed county land, and took down a barn older than his HOA." The room went silent. Victor's laugh faltered. Neighbors turned away. A board member slipped toward the exit. The fire chief nodded when Grayson requested a county investigation. Victor left without a word, his binder clutched like a lifeline. The next day, a state agent from the Department of Natural Resources arrived. Grayson handed over the drone footage, land deeds, and photos of crushed nesting sites. A no-contact order halted all work on the hill. Victor fought back, planting private HOA property signs on Grayson's land. The sheriff had them removed and stacked by the road. When HOA workers spray-painted new boundaries across Grayson's grazing land, he didn't confront Slade. Instead, he invited the county registrar, zoning board, and local ranchers to the barn's ruins. With maps and a broken barn beam, he showed them the truth. The HOA had trespassed on protected land. The county redrew the boundaries that night. The HOA unraveled. Residents flooded the hotline. Furious their dues funded Slade's legal battles. A contractor from the blast was arrested for unlicensed demolition, linking him to the detonator in the footage. Grayson found another clue. Slade's residency was listed in an unoccupied model home, a possible fraud. An anonymous envelope confirmed it. Email showed Slade backdating paperwork to secure his HOA role. Grayson filed the evidence with the ethics office and waited. Weeks later, state investigators walked into the HOA's glass-walled office. They handed Slade a summons and escorted him out mid-speech. The arrest hit the news by noon. Online, residents posted the drone footage with captions like, "This is where our dues went." Slade's emails about silencing rural resistance became a meme. The HOA board fractured. 3 members resigned, 2 were subpoenaed, and the Hill project was scrapped. The Department of Natural Resources banned future development after finding the blast had destabilized the ridge and harmed protected species. Grayson's barn was rebuilt stronger, with neighbors pitching in. A twisted beam from the wreckage was mounted above the gate, carved with barn justice. Slade faced trial for fraud and environmental violations, his name a local punchline. The luxury homes he championed sprouted for sale signs. Grayson kept working, quiet and steady, his land safer now, not because of fences, but because people knew he'd fight for it. One day, a kid on a field trip stared at the beam and asked, "Why keep it?" Grayson replied, "Reminders matter. Forget one mistake, you'll make the next." The barn stood solid, a testament to what happens when greed meets a man who knows the land's true boundaries. Slade thought he could redraw the map. He forgot someone always keeps the original. What do you think about this story? Was Sheriff Grayson's fight against Victor Slade a stand against injustice? Or did it escalate too far? Share your thoughts in the comments below, especially on how violence and unfairness play out in our world. Take a stance, tell us your perspective, and let's get the conversation going.